Let me at the outset express my gratitude to Telangana Vidyavantara Vedika and the Institute of Dalit Studies for having given me this opportunity to stand before you to deliver the inaugural address. The subject of today's seminar is one that should engage all of us as it involves all of us. The triumph of market capitalism with the collapse of the socialism has created a new situation to which we need to understand and conform. The current 2 decades-old phase of liberalism and globalization has confronted all countries with no option but to conform and to bear the costs of the system in the interest of growth. But growth of what? It would seem that it is the growth of the market that is the objective, not so much the growth of the capacity of the people of the land to bear the burden of present and future generations. The dominance of 100 or so large enterprises, motivated by the urge to conquer markets, establish political dominance, and ensure their future prospects, has led to an alliance between the infrastructure, manufacturing, and the services sector and the financial markets that provide their funding. On the other hand, these sectors are ensured support from political system and consequently dominate the political economy. It is clear that as the crony capitalists expand, they do so ipso facto with the aid of political parties and link up in turn with international market forces through joint ventures, financial support, and stock exchange operations. This then provides the crony capitalists of the developing world with the legitimacy acquired by market forces over a long period in the developed capitalist world. It is always a mistake for those in the developed world to consider the forces now unleashed in the developing world as some element of a transition phase. From our side, we see not a transition, only a transformation from capitalism under state control of varying kinds to state action under the control of capitalists of various kinds. Even in the developed world, the strength of the new capitalism under the liberalism banner is contested, and the scams and crises that are offered there too have raised issues of profound importance to those societies and polities. The subversion of politics and societies by capitalism is as much a matter of danger to the developed world as it is to the developing world. There it is still possible to control or regulate this phenomenon, largely because of the maturity and robustness of the democratic idea and its long established legitimacy. In the developing world, the idea of a representative democracy in many countries is still a remote, though achievable objective to which those societies are striving. The intervention of this new phenomena of market dominance and crony capitalists is undermining the political legitimacy of these infant democracies. What is happening in a theoretical sense is that sovereignty is flying away from local to the national level and then to the international level. Sovereignty is not flying away to other sovereignties of national and international legislatures. It is flying away to national and international market forces, forces beyond the control of national and international public institutions, however strong and global. In this situation, what is to be done? The forces now released are powerful and are capable not only of acting without hindrance, but also capable of setting the intellectual and popular agenda in such as a way as to legitimize the favor the achievement of their objectives. There is a reaction to such uninhibited capitalism and the dominance of significant personalities in the market. There is increasing popular revulsion and the protest against the disastrous effect of these forces on natural resources, forests, and indigenous population, plus the general immiseration in the mass of the population. But the capitalist forces command the media and through it the message they convey. They also dominate the funding of many agencies, universities, and foundations which propagate their cause. Increasingly, an account of greed is good culture that has been promoted by neoliberal ideologues. Many countries face the situation where the model of capitalism that the state is compelled to institute and the market response is predatory in nature. From mining mafia to political operators who all too willingly bend policies of the state to suit particular individuals or groups in the social and economic sphere, the reason there for weakening the capacities and intent to enforce the laws is the use of the legal. Even as the state provides violent support to those who benefit from such predatory capitalism, often violating the human rights of its citizens, particularly its poor, the market begins to function like a bureaucratic machine dominated by weakness, and the state begins to function like a market where everything is available for sale at price. The paradigm of governance that has emerged over the past 3 decades prioritizes the market and its natural course over any degree of control of it by the state. The role of the state is visualized by votaries of the neoliberal paradigm as that of a night watchman, and moreover it is also expected to take its hand out of till of the wealth generating machinery. Based on the theories of Arthur Laffer and pushed by the Washington Consensus, the prevailing wisdom of the elite and the policy makers is that reduction of tax rates, thereby making tax regimes regressive, would incentivize the supposed genius of entrepreneurial souls of individuals actuated by pursuit of self-interest and desire to accumulate great economic power. It was expected that this would enable the generation of more wealth at a more rapid pace, thereby enabling the state to generate appropriate revenues even with lower tax rates. Further benefits were also expected in moral terms that the lowering of tax rates would reduce the incentives of wealth generators to hide their monies, thereby saving them from the guilt of tax evasion. A small portion of our population over the past 2 decades has been chanting incessantly for increased privatization of the material resources of the community, and some of them even doubt whether the goals of equality and social justice are capable of being addressed directly. They argue that economic growth will eventually trickle down and lift everyone up. For those at the bottom of the economic and social pyramid, it appears that the nation has forsaken those goals as unattainable at best and unworthy at worst. The neoliberal agenda has increasingly eviscerated the state of its stature and power, bringing vast benefits to the few, modest benefits for some, while leaving everybody else the majority behind. Stiglitz, Nobel laureate, observed that these global imbalances are morally unacceptable and politically unsustainable. We have heard a lot about the free markets and freedom to market. We must confess that we were perplexed by the extent to which it was pressed that contractual arrangements between private parties with the state amongst themselves could displace obligations of the state to the people themselves. Judge Richard Posner, one of the giants of the free market ideology and responsible for building the intellectual foundation of neoliberal segments of the law and economic jurisprudence, has to say about the recent global financial crisis, and it is worth quoting here. Some conservatives believe that the depression is the result of unwise government policies. I believe it is a market failure. The government's myopia, passivity and blunders played a critical role in allowing the recession to balloon into depression and so have several fortuitous factors. But without any government regulation of the financial industry, the economy would still, in all likelihood, be in a depression. We are running from it, then we need a more active and intelligent government to keep our model of capitalist economy from running off the rails. The movement to deregulate the financial industry went too far by exaggerating the resilience, the self-healing powers of license-plate capitalism, unquote. History has repeatedly shown that a culture of uncontained greed along with uncontrolled markets lead to disasters. Human rationality with respect to pursuit of lucre is essentially short-run. So long as there appear to be possibilities of making profits, especially windfall profits, the fears that the competitors would reap them will drive business into taking greater risks. In fact, even by self-enforcement of blindness for the potential for market collapse. To say that it was a failure of regulation is right. Markets failed because regulation had practically ceased to exist. Finally, veering around to the view that regulation of markets is absolutely essential, after spending a lifetime arguing for the opposite and noting that capacity for self-regulation was highly overrated, the same Judge Posner, in his own inimitable manner, says, "If you are worried," I quote, "that lions are eating too many zebras, you don't say to the lions, you are eating too many zebras. You have to build the fence around the lions. They are not going to build it." Historically and all across the globe, predatory forms of capitalism seems to organize themselves, first and foremost, around the extractive industries and seek to exploit the vast but exhaustible natural resources. Water, forest, mineral, oil, they're all being privatized and not yet satisfied. The voices that speak for predatory capitalism seek more and more, ignoring the lessons from history and current experiences. One of the lessons of history is that, barring a few, most of the countries endowed with vast and easily exploitable natural resources have fared far worse than with smaller endowments. I have referred to what Stiglitz and the Posner said. I'll skip it for paucity of time. We draw the attention to this problem because even though it is often associated with those countries that depend mostly on earnings from export of natural resources, similar effects can also arise from activities within the domestic economy. Take the case of India itself. We cannot by any stretch of imagination claim that we are a resource-poor country. Yet, As we cast a glance across the face of our land, the greater incidence of social unrest, the movements for greater self-determination seem to occur by and large in states and regions that have plenty of natural wealth and paradoxically suffer from low levels of human development. We hasten to add that I am not suggesting that absence of resources could lead to a better situation. Rather, it is to point out that the problems arise because exploitation of those resources occurs without appropriate participation and supervision of the state as to the rates of exploitation, equitable distribution of wealth it generates. Collisions between extractive industry and some agents of the state and the consequent evisceration of the moral authority of the institutions of the state. The crux of the problem, as Professor Terry Ling says, utilizing the natural wealth effectively is not easy because the institutional setting is generally incapable of dealing with economic manifestations of resources stress. It ends up transforming them in a vicious development cycle or what is called staple trap. I'm not saying that markets have no role to play in a developing economy or that private initiative is suppressed and that all markets are essentially and only tools for expropriation and the continuance of social injustices. We are stating that so far as our constitution is concerned, it posits that markets can be inimical to social justice, especially when left unregulated. Laissez-faire market is a myth. Nevertheless, it would be necessary to note that there is a fly in the ointment of above story of fiction-free markets that would always clear and always work to the benefit of the society. The strength of tax collecting machinery can and ought to be expected to have a direct bearing on the revenues collected by the state. If the machinery is weak, understaffed, ideologically motivated to look the other way, or the agents motivated by not so salubrious motives, the amount of revenue collected by the state would decline, stagnate, or may not generate the revenues for the state that is consonant with its responsibilities. From within the neoliberal paradigm also emerged the undergirding current of thought that revenues for the state implies a big government and hence a strong tax collecting machinery itself would be undesirable. Where the elite lose out in democratic politics of achieving ever-decreasing tax rates, it would appear that the state machinery is in the hands of the executive, all too willing to promote the extreme versions of the neoliberal paradigm and co-opt itself in the enterprise of the elite, may also become all too willing to not develop substantial capacities to monitor and to follow the money collect, the lawfully mandated taxes, and even look the other way. The result may be as expected, have been disastrous across many nations. In addition, it would also appear that in this miasmic cultural environment, in which greed is extolled, conspicuous consumption viewed as both necessary and socially valuable, and wealthy viewed as demigods and agents of the state, may have also succumbed to the notions of neoliberal paradigm that the role of the state ought to only be an enabling one and not exercise significant control. This attitude would have a significant impact on the exercise of discretion, especially in the context of regulating economic activities. including keeping the account of the monies generated in various activities, both legal and illegal. Carried away by the ideology of neoliberalism, it is entirely possible that the agents of the state entrusted with the task of supervising the economic and social activities may err more on the side of extreme caution, whereby signals of wrongdoing may be ignored and even when they are strong. Instances of powers that be ignoring publicly visible market scams or turning a blind eye to large-scale illegal mining have become all too familiar and may be readily cited. If the state is soft, to a large extent, especially in terms of the unholy nexus between the lawmakers, the lawkeepers, and the lawbreakers, the moral authority, and also moral insensitives, the exercise suitable control over the economy and the society would itself vanish. In a recent book, Professor Rodberg states, well, I will not bother you about what the other author said. Predatory forms of capitalism, supported and prompted by the state, in direct contravention of constitutional norms. When I say constitutional norms, I don't refer only to the Indian Constitution, but the constitutions throughout the world. And values often take deep roots around extractive industries. In India too, we find a great frequency of occurrence of more volatile incidents of social risk. Historically in the present, in resource-rich regions, which paradoxically also suffer from low levels of development. The Constitution itself in no uncertain terms demands that the state shall strive incessantly and consistently to promote fraternity among all citizens, such that dignity of every citizen is protected, nourished and promoted. The people as such are left with no weapons to fight back in a situation like this, except their voices. In many democratic contexts, even the ballot box supplies, I'm sorry to say, no remedy. The suborning of political parties and elected and bureaucratic officials is a simple matter of money and political power. The people are forgotten as soon as the ballot is counted. The fear we have, we must seriously consider is this: that the popular unrest and revulsion to crony capitalism and a denial of sovereignty to the people will lead to the emergence of forces which promise to control and suppress these forces. This can be through an emergence of, quote, strong men. I do not wish to say the fact who promise order without capitalist oppression. But such promises end with supersession of democratic institutions. Thus we are in a quandary. To suppress the forces we dislike, we have to rely to forces we dislike even more. It is this dilemma that Europe and other parts of the world confronted and resolved